So let me talk a little bit about the preferential shapes test, right? And so one of the things that is kind of interesting about semiotics is how it's always looking at signs and sign systems. And the basic sign system through which we organize the world around us is our language system. So everybody has a language system. And so, and we've talked a little bit about that already, but so Hal de Saussure, who was a linguist, started, of course, was dealing with language, and he was mostly dealing with French, I think, because this is the language that he's taught in. But the application goes to every language, and I'm curious, Naoko, because your language, the Asian languages are quite different than the phonic Western languages, right? Because it's a much more the characters operate differently than words, right? Am I understanding that correctly? So, so the application of this kind of Western thinker was directly connected to Western sign systems. And so I would be very interested in hearing what you think about, as we talk about this, if it applies as well to Japanese or to Chinese script or what have you, you know, so because the phonic systems are different, of course, in some ways, and has a different use value. So so it'll be interesting to hear what you have to say about that. But how I often start my classes talking about giving them an example of a sign system, a very simple sign system, so that they can see how basically sign systems work. And so this little sign system is called the preferential shapes. The preferential shapes is based on 5 universal geometries or forms: the circle, the square, the triangle, the spiral, and the equidistant cross. And so I'll show you an image of that in a moment. And so each one of these symbols mean something. I mean, they resonate in every culture. A circle, it is going to mean something to everyone. And the person who kind of developed this most succinctly was a woman named Arian Angelis, and so, or Angelis Arian. And so she implies that the definitions that she gave to them are a bit universal. And so we'll see how universal they are. My students vary on this. When I give them this information, sometimes they say, you know, they see it differently, you know, but we'll see what you have to think about it, right? So, but each of the 5 symbols, the circle, the square, the triangle, the spiral, and equidistant cross, each means something different. And then what one does is one thinks about those shapes, and then you draw them on a piece of paper in the order of your preference, so that the shape that you put in position 1 is the shape that you like the most, and then down to position 5, the shape that you like the least. And this is known as this preferential shapes test. So you can do that if you want. And then we'll talk about we'll do a reading of your because I'm a master of the readings. Master of the signs. I've been doing this test for a long time, so we'll talk about that, you know, because that's that's fun too. Okay, so just write them down in the order of your preference. And I tell my students that this is not going to go down on your tombstone or anything. It's just how you feel right now. You don't want to overthink it too much, you know, because
not psychological analysis.
Yeah, well, it will be, but
I should do that.
But you have no control over that. I'm the one who does the reading. You just write down the shapes in the order of your preference. So this is a fun test. It's really interesting. But also it's going to show very clearly how sign systems work, how all sign systems basically work. Okay, so I think I'll pull up this chart now, and I'll show you what these are, and then I'll kind of take you through what each of them mean, and then each of the positions, and then we can start doing readings. And then can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, so you see the circle, the square, the triangle, the equidistant cross, and the spiral. So circles, as you can see, is one line that meets itself, and so this is oftentimes interpreted as meaning a whole. something that is complete.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is like having a question that has an answer. And it's very satisfying because it completes everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Also, there is some connection here with the idea of the self as a whole entity, you know. So while all of these shapes are going to mean something different about you, this one kind of symbolizes your ego, you know, your sense of self. And so because of that, it's also connected to fame or celebrity sometimes. It depends on where it falls in the chart. But some people like to be seen. This is like a spotlight shining on you. So some people like that and some people don't like that, right? So it also is connected somewhat to that kind of an idea. So the circle is that. So it's about completeness and wholeness and those kinds of things. Okay, so we move to the square. So the square is a very stable symbol, and that's what it means, is stability. And so this is all about rules and regulations. It also, there's positive and negatives with each of these. And so the positive of the square is that we all need to have a place, a sense of place. And so so the square can symbolize like architecture, in the sense of you build a house, you start with a square and then you build the walls and then you get inside the house, right? So people who, you know, have a good sense of place, you know, the square is a symbol of that. And so, but sometimes, because life is whatever it is, we can sometimes build our walls too thick. You know, if we feel like the world is threatening or you live in a dangerous situation, you can put up walls and then there's no doors and there's no windows and you can't get out. And so sometimes the negative of the square can be like the prison, the sense of a prison. You're locked inside, you can't get out, right? Also, since it's about order, and then this is also about people who live their lives orderly, in an orderly way. We actually describe these people in the West as squares. These are people that don't have adventures, you know, because they live their lives so driven by order, and it has to be exactly right, that they never adventure outside of that order because they're very nervous about that, right? So they live very closely within their prescribed walls. And so, so the positive is that we all need a place to live, but the opposite, the negative would be, don't build a prison for yourself, you know. But I tell my students at this point sometimes that if you want to study with someone, find a person who is predominantly a square person, because they're always going to have the homework on time and they're always going to have it done perfectly right. So square person is that, you know, the rules and regulations, living their lives by the rules and regulations. And the triangle is the symbol of the quest or the search. It's about focus. If you look at the bottom of the triangle, it's like two eyes, and then they're looking at a goal, right? So this is the idea in perspective. If you do 1 point perspective, is that you have this triangle with a dot at the end, and then all the lines go to the dot at the end. And so you have this idea of focus and how your gaze can be motivated very strongly by the triangle. So the triangle is about the quest, the search for whatever you need to be searching for. It's what you set as a goal for yourself, and then you're searching for that. It's also a very spiritual kind of symbol in some ways, because it's like the holy mountain. So you go to the top of the mountain, and there's the guru who's there waiting for you to, you know, get the important information. So it can symbolize that kind of sacred quest, that sacred search. But it can be, depending on where you put it in the chart, it can be that you're just hungry and you're looking for a pizza. Okay, so it just depends on, you know, where it falls in the chart. But it's that kind of an idea that it's something that you're looking for. So the negative of the triangle, of course, is that if you can become so focused on your own quest that you can forget that others are on the journey with you. So, you know, it's always good to sometimes take the blinders off and notice that, yes, you're on a quest, you're on your own journey, but there are other people who are also on the journey too. And so, and they could be helpful, you know, you don't know along the way. So the cross, the next symbol, is the symbol for relationships. And so The vertical in this is the person, is you. The vertical is you, and the horizontal is the other. Okay, so the vertical, you describe yourself this way in English. You say I want something, right? So I is this vertical. So the vertical is you, and the horizontal is the other. Now, many religious systems use these symbols as, a part of their symbology. And of course, Christianity uses the cross, as their primary symbol, right? And so in the case of Christianity, and oftentimes sacred uses of this symbol, the vertical symbolizes the deity, God, and then the horizontal symbolizes all humans on the planet, right? So you've got the God figure, which is the vertical figure, kind of pointing up to heaven and pointing down to earth, and then the horizontal line, which is the earth itself. So that is the symbol, of course, that the hero of Christianity, Jesus, was crucified on. So that's that very good pointer there to that. And so very symbolic pointer, as it turns out. And so the last symbol is the spiral, and the spiral is the symbol for transformation and change. And so it's the first symbol. It looks a little like the first symbol because it's kind of circular, but you'll see that this is like having a question and you can't find the answer. So you keep looking for the answer, but you can't find the answer. So you go on a spiral. So you can spiral outward. Sometimes the spiral spirals from the center out. So you go out into the world, and in going out into the world, you transform, you change yourself, because that's what happens. Or you can take the inner journey and go inside, and you can have that kind of experience where you do the inner search. And of course, you're transformed through that as well. It's a transformation toward knowing yourself as well. Joseph Campbell talked about it this way. He says, Joseph Campbell, the great mythologist, that whether you go on the outward journey or the inward journey, you end up in the same place, and that is knowing yourself and your relationship to the world. And so that's that. The negative of the spiral, everybody, the spiral is good because you learn and you grow and you transform. But the negative of that is that there is, you can get lost fairly easily.
It's like a maze.
Yeah, it's like a maze. It's very difficult. Sometimes, you get lost in the maze. And so those are the meanings of these symbols. Now, to make this work, what you have to do is know what the positions are, because you have yours in 5 positions. So here are the positions and their meanings. And okay. Position 1 is whatever symbol you place in position 1 symbolizes some current issue that you are dealing with at some point in your life right now. So oftentimes I describe this as where your head is, because it's what is going around in your head. You're thinking about it. So whatever sign you put in there symbolizes that. The symbol that you place in position number 2 is symbolizes your personal strength. It's something that you can always count on. It's there for you. Position 3 is the deepest connection here, because it's the deepest position in the chart, right? So this is where your heart is. And so while your head is struggling with position 1, position 3 is really your stable place. It's where your heart is. It's the most important aspect of you. And then position 4 is whatever symbol you place in position 4 symbolizes your personal motivation. Why is it that you do whatever you wish to do? And so then right now. And so then position 5 symbolizes some recent problem that happened, probably within the last few weeks, that has happened. And so now that symbol is there symbolizing that for you. Okay. So once you have what the symbols mean, and then you have what the positions mean, you can begin to do readings. Okay.